Welcome to the presentation on disaster preparedness by Karen Cross. This is a nursing professional's call to action. A natural disaster is any event produced by Mother Nature, such as a tornado, hurricane, fire, flood, earthquake, tsunami, or volcano, which has catastrophic effects for those that live near the impacted area. So far in 2014, according to the FEMA website, there have already been 29 declarations of either fire management assistance, emergencies, or major disasters located within the United States. One of these events has actually occurred in my neighborhood of Pensacola, Florida, when a record-setting 24 inches of rain fell in a 24-hour period of time. This rain flooded much of my community and displaced many families. As a registered nurse, I wandered around my community wondering how I can get involved. Lending a hand to my neighbors, of course, was my first thought, but involvement further required a little bit of preparation on the part of myself as a registered nurse, and therefore you as a medical professional. Following any catastrophic event, there is a well-documented phenomenon where people converge upon the impacted area wanting to help. They either come by person, or they can also be individuals outside of the community setting that are collecting supplies and then sending them to the victims without a true understanding of what the community, the impacted community, truly needs. This can be seen following most disasters, including Hurricanes Katrina and Sandy, as well as the World Trade Center attack. But the earthquake that occurred in Haiti triggered a worldwide call to action that offered many opportunities to learn how to handle disaster management and medical care. Following the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, many medical professionals took leave of their jobs and flew to the tiny island wanting to lend a hand. However, due to their lack of training in disaster preparedness, these individuals came unprepared, without their own medical supplies like anesthesia, and were not prepared for the chaos of disorganization due to a lack of central leadership. Many of these volunteers did not understand third world medicine due to the lack of experience of the medical care outside the United States, which led to the very real threat causing more harm than good. So why do people converge upon a disaster? Because some feel the need to help others so keenly that while others are personally affected by the tragedy, one way to decrease that stress and anxiety is to offer a hand to their community members. Regardless of why people volunteer, things must occur in a systematic and orderly manner in order to provide safe and effective care of those in need of medical services. So to kind of bring this around and look at it in a different perspective, we could see that the risk of spontaneous volunteers or people that show up to a disaster site wanting to help is that they're typically underutilized in their skill set. So you may have physicians or nurses or other medical professionals or other individuals who show up and say, I can do X, Y, or Z. But unfortunately, because they are not registered with an official organization, they are underutilized. We can't use that skill set unless it's a confirmed skill set. They pose a security risk because any individual can go up and say, I'm a nurse, I can help. Other medical professionals may be unfamiliar with disaster medicine. Therefore, they can hinder the efforts of the disaster response team. And there is a huge potential to distract the trained responders from their duties. The flip side of this is that there is an incredible benefit of volunteers. These individuals will arrive on the scene wanting to help. They can be a significant resource to the recovery efforts, especially as we discovered in Katrina, many people could not even get to the impacted areas. And however they come to the scene, when they are appropriately managed, spontaneous volunteers make the difference in their community and in recovery efforts. There are 4 phases of disaster management: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. In the mitigation phase, what we're looking at is reducing the risk and preventing disasters. This phase usually occurs before and after an event. Before an event, so that we could prevent it from happening. After the event, so we could prevent it from reoccurring. Examples of mitigation include insurance and also mitigation studies. In preparedness, this is the plan to prevent loss of life and property. It occurs before the event, and examples include evacuation plans that the cities prepare, as well as food and water storage. Then, in the event that tragedy strikes, we have response. This is an action to prevent further loss of life and property. It occurs during an event, and examples include seeking shelter or providing shelter for those that are displaced from an event, and also an implementation of evacuation plans. And in the last phase is recovery. This is the act of returning to normal. It occurs, of course, after the event, and examples include financial assistance to aid in repairs and a return of normalcy to a community. As a registered nurse, our compassionate nature drives us to lend a hand during a disaster. This may occur within our current hospital setting, or we may feel a need to assist on a larger scale within our community. Whatever our calling, it's our professional responsibility to prepare for disasters. Some ways we can get involved is through our local hospitals, community disaster preparedness committees, state organizations, as well as government institutions. We will address these in the following slides. For local opportunities, we look at the wake of a disaster, and we look at the hospital emergency rooms becoming the epicenter of action in the management of acute injury. It's important for nurses to understand the differences between acute care and the care of the patient in a crisis setting. The ANA has prepared a series of professional papers to engage the professional nurse on differences between these two settings. This paper is titled Adapting Standards of Care Under Extreme Conditions, Guidance for Professionals During Disasters, Pandemics, and Other Extreme Emergencies. The main way that we can financially afford to stay involved in preparing for disasters is through the Hospital Preparedness Program. They assist with the funding of independent training exercises as well as citywide disaster drills. What we have learned is that through proper training and preparation, patient outcomes are greatly improved in any crisis state. At the city level, each city in its own right across the United States, small or large, should be well prepared for a disaster. Monthly city council meetings bring about discussions on proper disaster management and preparedness. City councils also help mitigate risk by reviewing past disasters and attempting to reduce risk by city-run projects which decrease future disasters. Again, mitigation. A registered nurse can easily become involved in a community effort to improve disaster preparations through the local Community Emergency Response Team, or the CERT team. CERT teams are created to educate people about disaster preparedness as well as hazards that may impact their area. Through different educational opportunities, community members are trained to respond to a variety of settings where necessary services, such as medical care, which may not be readily available during a disaster. These individuals are encouraged to take a more active role in emergency preparedness within their community and become a resource during an acute crisis. At the state level, you also have a CERT team set in place through the FEMA website. The Federal Emergency Management website indicates that each state has their own involvement, and the mission statements of each of the disaster teams are very similar, and that is for the state members to work together to ensure proper planning, preparation, and mitigation in order to respond to community needs within that state. With proper training, the states are more prepared to respond to emergencies and assist in recovery efforts. Then we have government level opportunities. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is a department within the Homeland Security. It is not a volunteer-based organization, but it helps to coordinate the efforts of local, city, and state organizations, which do depend very heavily on volunteers. The main job of FEMA is to task other federal departments and agencies to provide direct assistance during emergencies and disasters. They attempt to mitigate risk across the United States as well. In this slide, you can see how local, state, and federal agencies work very cohesively together during a crisis state. You have FEMA, or the Joint Field Offices, which help with technical specialists, with funding, and with resources and equipment. That then gets funneled down to the state level, where it can be helped to improve state functioning as well as local and impacted areas. You can see that the command and coordination is always done between the state and the local communities. We could also see that at the command level, you have the Incident Command Center, which is very important to understand from a CERT level perspective. To understand the command structure, on the FEMA website, there is a web-based course called the Introduction to Incident Command Systems. This provides a foundation for higher level ICS training, and it's intended for individuals that are involved with planning, response, or recovery efforts. We should understand the levels of which everybody works. This is a CEU course and is about 3 hours long. As a participant within our local CERT teams, we should understand the chain of command. We should understand that there is one person that is usually in charge of the disaster, or the incident commander. That commander typically has officers which will then direct the care of operations, planning, logistics, and also how are we financing this. Within each of these sections, we're going to have volunteers that work within these specialties. Somebody who knows logistics very well, somebody who understands the operations. Those individuals are going to be volunteers and are specifically trained within the CERT program. So to understand at a further level this command structure at the national involvement, there's also another course on the FEMA website called the National Incident Management System. This provides a platform that enables government and private sector and non-governmental organizations to work together in the event of a disaster. It's intended for individuals who have emergency management responsibilities, but it does not include specific role training. Those role training courses are also available on the website, on the FEMA website, but I will not go into detail here. The NIMS course is also 3 hours long and does offer CEUs. In conclusion, natural disasters can occur anywhere and anytime throughout the world. As a nurse, it's within our nature to reach out and help others. Because of this, it's our professional responsibility to prepare our families, friends, neighbors, and community members for the eventual probability of a disaster. Preparation is essential for success, and the need to prepare is greatest in the absence of a crisis. Although we cannot train for every disaster that may come our way, through preparing for the worst, we can hope for the best possible outcomes for our future patients. And in the words of Benjamin Franklin, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Thank you for listening to this presentation.